Right now, let us dive into the next segment. And the next segment features a Luminary sharing session on unveiling the possibilities of the cosmic catalyst of technological innovation. We have a very distinguished entrepreneur. She is the founder of SES, Loral-Teleport Europe, Europe Online, ILS, and is an investor in Kacific. She also serves as the chair of Seraphim Space Advisory Board and is a partner and founder vice chair of the NorthStar Earth and Space. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Miss Candace Johnson.
So I think I may have to sing. Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what life is like on Jupiter and Mars. Okay. I was hoping you would get some more people in, but maybe they wanted to stay out. Okay, so it's absolutely lovely to be here, and Singapore, reminds me very much of the country where I started SES, a small country with huge potential and possibilities, and made the vision come true. So I am calling this the dawn of a new era, or a renaissance in space. And it's really about my personal journey of using space to provide first universal access, to accessing then the universe, and then from going there to do networks in space. And, let's just go back to the future, 1957. Now, some of you were here yesterday when I gave a speech for the young students at the space faculty, which was just great. And I told them that I was 5 years old in 1957 when the first Sputnik was launched. And I also told them, though, that if you can kind of see in the middle there, there's a little Sputnik, a little kind of flying saucer. And Santa Claus is inside there, and that is the Sputnik that I received when I was 5 to put on the Christmas tree, and I have put it on every single year since then. So, there's no question about it. The world has never needed so much connectivity. Can you put the things here? I don't know if it's possible, but anyway, okay. So much connectivity, so much interconnectivity, so much interactivity as now. And space is what we need to use it and to achieve this. So and I would also like to say thank you. I have never, ever done a government project. Everything that I have ever done is financially, privately financed, market-oriented. And so I told everybody I'm actually a 45-year veteran of new space. I'm also a person who has always done everything purpose-driven. I did not do it because of technology. I did not do it because of financial gain. I did it because I believed that for whatever reason, if it was trying to bring about freedom of choice with the Astra satellite, with SES, and please everybody, I started SES in 1983 when the world and Europe did not look like that. There was a line drawn through Europe, but I said, no, we must have a satellite that covers all of Europe. And we were very fortunate in 1988, so 5 years later, which when you consider that we were going against everybody, all of the government monopolies were furious at us, we were able to launch our first satellite in Kourou with Arianespace. I'm very happy to see that Stephen Israel is here. And Stephen, just for you to know, because nobody wanted to work with us, we were the renegades. We were a private company. And it was one of the first presidents of Arianespace, Frédéric Dallest. And he told me, he said, Miss Johnson, you bring your satellite to me and I will launch it. And so it took me 5 years, but I did. And he was a very smart man. It was the first ever American satellite that was American-made satellite that was launched by Arianespace, but it opened up the whole market for Arianespace to the United States. I will never, ever forget Frédéric Dallest. Now, ladies, please, you see that, unfortunately, I am the only woman in this picture. This is where we are launching. It is the night that we are going to launch the Astra satellite, the first ever private transporter satellite system in the world. And behind me, the very, very good gentleman in the white shirt is the Grand Duke of Luxembourg, and behind him, the gentleman with the white hair is the Prime Minister of Luxembourg. So you have to imagine that I was very worried. But I had told Luxembourg, I had told the Grand Duke, I had told the Prime Minister that they were looking for a fourth economic pillar. And they had 3 crises. They had a broadcast crisis, they had a steel crisis, and they had a monetary union crisis. And I said, if you will let us create this private company in Luxembourg to do the world's first private transporter satellite system, and to bring freedom of choice in television viewing, we will have a success. Today, SES, Astra, it is Luxembourg's largest single taxpayer. Now, it's one thing to be, successful, and what happened in 1989? We launched 1988, December 13th, 1988. 11 months later, the wall fell down. And you remember that picture where I showed you that we covered all of Europe? Well, guess what? We were the only ones who covered all of Europe when the wall fell down. And so we became right away #1 in Europe. But it's one thing to become #1, it's another thing to stay #1. And here for you in Singapore, it's so important to think global. And so in 1998, I architected SES Global. And it's always buy or build. I did the math, and I said, okay, if we can buy what we would normally take 8 years to build, if we could buy another system that would complete us and make us be a global satellite system, that would be better. So I decided we should buy GE America, and we became the world's largest satellite system, and we still are today. So, I was at the European Space Conference about 2 weeks ago, and, Europe is still waiting now, and we're going to have the Ariane 6 very soon. But in 1990, we started working on putting together ILS, International Launch Services, with, because we wanted to have more launchers. And so it was 10 years before SpaceX. We commercialized the Khrushchev, the Proton rocket, with Lockheed Martin to create ILS, International Launch Services. And you can see on top of that rocket the Astra, the SES logo. We launched it on April 9th, 5:30 in the morning in Baikonur. And for the next 10 years, ILS was the #1 launcher in the world. You know, I'm talking about creating universal access. So whether it's for satellite television, whether it was for launch services, whether it is for here with Teleport Europe, when that wall fell down, companies needed to be able to communicate. And so I created Teleport Europe, and it was in Hanover. And I told the president of Lower Saxony, I showed him everything that satellite telecommunications could do, telephony. It wasn't allowed to do it for private companies, but I showed him anyway. Data, using the IP protocol. And he was so impressed, he sent his finance minister the next day to me, and he said, Gerhard Schröder says that I'm supposed to give you everything you need. And indeed, he always said that I brought him into the digital world when he was chancellor. The Internet Protocol, because of Teleport Europe and the fact that I was using Internet Protocol over satellite to connect the businesses of Eastern Europe and Western Europe, I was absolutely thrilled with the Internet Protocol. I also have to say that I grew up with the father of the Internet Protocol, Vint Cerf. And so I decided that we needed to have mothers communicate with mothers. This is 1994 when I had this idea, and that the Internet Protocol was going to be able to allow us to do that. So we started first land-based, but very soon I put the Internet onto satellite to create the world's first broadband internet satellite service. And particularly now with some of the other things that I'm doing, that is a very wonderful, was a wonderful event for me. 1994, I was also asked to go and become the global vice president of Iridium. So, you know, people talk about OneWeb, and they talk about Starlink, and they, talk about Kuiper, and I just kind of yawned. Because really, Iridium was the precursor of all of those systems. And it was a beautiful system. So when we are talking, and it still is, and we are talking about universal access, remember, my big thing is using technology to provide a service or a purpose. And the reason that I feel so strongly about that is my dad, he was one of the first to create and build a satellite for the United States government, and then he also did the world's first private satellite system, NorthStar. And so when you grow up with that from age 5, you realize that technology is not the most important thing. The most important thing is to use that technology to create an impact, to make the world better, to bring about, in this case, universal access. And 11 years ago, I put together a group of women, Oceania Women's Network Satellite. It's still, I think, one of my most beautiful projects. And we stood behind and were one of the first investors in Kacific. So Singapore-based Kacific, bringing high-throughput broadband internet to the islands of the Pacific, to villages, to schools, to hospitals, disaster relief. It is such an amazing, system and company, and who else would call themselves the heart of broadband but Kacific? We have heard now this morning about the fact that because of the launch decrease, because of the digitalization, that we are getting smaller satellites, more performant satellites. We're getting more satellites. We're doing CubeSats. One of my friends from Guaning Su, he was the chair of Nanyang Technical University, and he always told me he was so proud that under his presidency they had done a CubeSat. And then, of course, we're also now looking at software-defined satellites. So, when I called Ann Winblatt, really the software guru of the world, along with Bill Gates, who she used to date, I said, I wanted her to be on the advisory board of Seraphim with me. She said, but Candace, I'm only a software person. I said, Ann, that is exactly what we need. And it is really true. Software is playing such an important role. And so we're also seeing, when people talked about new space, I said, well, what is new space? And this was about 7 years ago with a wonderful friend, Hélène Huby, who's now doing her own spaceship, the exploration company. And so I said, well, what's new space? Well, she said, it's privately financed, market-oriented, commercially driven. I said, Hélène, I've never done anything but new space. And that's the only reason to do space in any case, and the rewards are huge. So we are looking also now at onboard processing. The gentleman before me talked about quantum. I'm a big, big believer in quantum, also kind of fueling AI. And of course, we are seeing the big data, not only in bringing down it to Earth, but also in space. And so with this, what we're calling old space, new space, actually the most important thing is fast space, okay? We've got to get up there quickly. We've got to be able to launch quickly. We have to have infrastructure on demand. And so all of this is creating this fast space. And then, of course, the wonderful images and the capabilities that the James Webb Telescope is bringing us, it's really doing what I now am calling one space. So deep space, near space, and the planet. And for me, this is one space. And just to kind of give you, just a couple of ideas of what I am working on right now. Of course, I believe very strongly in always staying with whatever you've done. And so sometimes the companies need me and they call on me, and sometimes they're just doing great and nobody's happier. But I'm always trying to go ahead. And so I think that for me, what I'm looking at now are space in space. This is going to be in-orbit servicing, in-orbit manufacturing, robotics, 3D printing, material science is going to be huge, docking. I do see not a prolonged life for geosatellites, I see a second life for geosatellites, where they can be platforms to then go to do deep exploration in space. Obviously, we're all looking at space stations. We had Axiom, Voyager, Sierra, and these will all be built modularly in space. And we're also now using space for energy, medicine, agriculture, research, etc. And indeed, this is the company I was telling you about, the exploration company, my friend Hélène Huby. I'm also a proud investor. And by the way, you can invest in space. It doesn't have to be a lot of money. You can invest 5,000, you can invest 10,000, and you can have a part of space and part of that adventure. And so she is creating her own her own spaceship, and she is doing experiments with pharmaceuticals, etc., but now also helping to do flight heritage and bringing transport to, for instance, Axiom, where she just got a contract. And then also here again, another woman, so women, come on. We are doing, she's doing interstellar labs, so her name is Barbara Belvisi, and she is creating these pods to build and to grow plants in space. And she recently won the Deep Space NASA Challenge for the food challenge. So we're all tremendously proud of her. And her pods are also being used by L'Oreal to grow specific plants on the Earth. So in space and on the Earth. We're looking at clouds in space. So, I'm trying to show you a little bit, not 100% to Mars, like our next speaker will be talking about, but what's on the next horizon. So clouds in space, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft, Azure, SES Cloud on the O3B. And of course, we're looking at dual mission, very, very important dual mission. We are looking today, and we are experiencing the world's first space-based war. All right? It's not fun, but it's the truth. And when I was growing up, my dad always said, we'll use satellites for telecommunications, for entertainment, for education. And when we have wars, we'll have wars in space, and we'll have peace on Earth. I wish we could also have wars, peace in space, and we've got to work on that. And, but at the moment, Earth intelligence, space situation awareness, I was very interested to hear that space situation awareness is being worked on here in Singapore. I am the founding vice chair of NorthStar. We are doing the world's first space-based space situation awareness, and I will be reaching out to the university to talk about their edge computing for SSA. We also have to be careful about the colonization of space. This is something, having been a monopoly breaker, but not a monopoly breaker to break monopolies. No, a monopoly breaker because what I was doing happened to break the monopoly, happened to go against the status quo. And I am worried that with inefficient satellite systems that could be used, quite frankly, Starlink, I think, is an inefficient satellite system. And I think that there are other systems that could, and the geo systems even, that can be as efficient. And we must be very, very careful to make certain that we keep orbital positions and frequency bands open for the new space emerging faring nations. This is so important. And so I've written a manifesto to make this happen. So what are the next big trends? Space, space launchers, space transportation, in-orbit services, manufacturing, software and onboard processing, space stations, regional connectivity, satellite systems like Kacific here in Singapore, space-based solar power. I'm very big on space-based solar power, space exploration, and space experiments. And so as I said, I've gone from providing universal access to then accessing the universe with Earth observation, with space situational awareness, to now I'm doing networks for the universe. And I believe that we will have energy networks, we will have transport networks, we will have R&D networks, we will have brain networks, we will be using the metaverse, digital twins, AI, quantum, et cetera, to be able to communicate with those people on Mars, which we will need to have, there's no question about it. And, really the findings of the James Webb, as the Deputy Prime Minister said, are really now connecting us with our origins to create one space where we are literally at one with deep space, with near space, and with the planet. This is a little bit something space-based solar power. It's basically just putting solar panels on a space station. So very exciting. Moon data centers. I have a couple of friends who are doing moon data centers. One friend will be here tomorrow doing fueling in Earth, in space. And just 2 weeks ago, my company, NorthStar, we did indeed launch our first 4 satellites to create space-based, space situational awareness, where we will be able to track all of the objects in space. As we go forward, this will be important to keep space clean and safe for all. Thank you so much.